Marco Rubio is going to go on the lead with Jake Tapper, a CNN show, and he's going to discuss the fact that the U.S. opened the doors to Cuba and might potentially take away the embargo. It's opening the telecommunications, opening the banking system. A huge step forward. Marco Rubio disagrees. Let's listen to him.
I know you're happy that Alan Gross is home and back with his family, but you say the president is making a mistake. What is the mistake?
Well, the mistake has to do with the unilateral concessions to the Cuban government. Let's run through the list of it. Full diplomatic relations, that means the recognition of the Cuban government's legitimacy, the opening up the banking sector, more telecommunications, higher remittances, a whole series of things that truly undermine the sanctions regime that's in place against the Cuban government for being a tyranny. So in exchange for that, what do we get? Here's what the Cuban people get. 53 political prisoners are going to be set free, people that shouldn't even be in jail to begin with, but remember, if they join up the cause of democracy, they'll be right back in jail. And the United Nations has agreed to more closely monitor conditions on the ground in Cuba.
Well, okay.
That's a terrible arrangement for democracy and the Cuban people.
Well, as President Obama says, and it's a factual matter, the embargo has been in place for more than a half century, longer than either one of us has been alive, and the Castro regime is still in power. Why not try something new?
I agree we should try something new. That something new should be to be even more serious about imposing a cost on the Cuban government for being a tyranny. For example, last year, the Cuban government, this has not been well covered, the Cuban government last year helped North Korea try to evade UN sanctions. They had a ship that left Havana with a bunch of banned material that was seized during the Panama Canal. The Cubans were helping the North Korea evade UN sanctions. The United States government did nothing about that. And back in 1996, the Cuban government murdered American citizens that were flying over the Straits of Florida, international waters, trying to help rescue people. We've not indicted the people that have done that. And as far as this argument that nothing's worked, I think people fundamentally misunderstand the purpose of these sanctions today. The purpose of the sanctions today, as opposed to back during the Cold War, is it serves as leverage so that you go to a Cuban government and you say, as the law already does, it's been codified, if you open up democratically, if you start to make real democratic progress in Cuba, the sanctions will go away. That's real leverage, especially with a successor government to the Castro one, when new leadership takes over, which won't be long from now. All of that is virtually gone now for the most part.
Listen, Cuban government, Fidel Castro, that regime, it's been very brutal towards the people. It's been tyrannical towards the Cuban people. And overall, I believe they've had a negative effect over the Cuban economy, the Cuban government, and the Cuban people as a whole. I agree with that. I agree that they haven't been perfect. What I'm saying to you is that there's a certain point where we have to have diplomacy, where we have to sit down at the table and see what we bring and what we might have to compromise on. You're not going to both get exactly what you want, but at the end of the day, we both might come out with mostly positive effects. That's compromise. That's diplomacy. That's how you evade going through this entire violent conflict with the Bay of Pigs. When we talk about the embargo, over the top, prideful, egotistical ways of handling a situation where you might have disagreements. The way you go about it is exactly what we just did, which is we see what we bring to the table, and we come out and we have mostly positive effects. They negotiated. And to sit here and say that opening the telecommunications, opening the banking system, and potentially taking away the embargo, to say that those are concessions towards Cubans is entirely false. No, as a matter of fact, the Cubans might have actually got a concession, because we got 53 political prisoners released, as well as Alan, and all they got in return were a few Cuban spies. So, no, as a matter of fact, they might have even gotten the concession. What I'm saying to you is that at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter who might have gotten the worst end of the deal. What matters is that we're opening an entirely different market to us. What Cuba brings to the table is a kind of exotic, tropical market, and that has a bunch of dollar signs. And I can't wait to see what might come out of the table. Cuba is a funky and fresh nation, and anytime I watch a documentary on it, and anytime I hear from somebody who actually might have experienced it personally, I just love listening to the story. Cuba is a very exotic nation, and hopefully, just as when we open the doors to China and Vietnam, that will have a great effect on our economy. And I believe that this only can have positive effects. So Marco Rubio, entirely wrong. And buddy, next time, hopefully you don't come into the White House, because I don't want you sitting at the table discussing with Putin, discussing with all these nations, if you're just going to automatically start a fist fight. If your solution to the problem is to strengthen the iron wall, that is ridiculous, and that's not the way you handle a disagreement. However, guys, this agreement will not only help us and our economy, but the Cuban economy as well. These people have been oppressed and impoverished for so long, been held in these terrible conditions, been in these brutal, tyrannical government and regime with the Castro regime. They've held their grip on this economy for so long, but now we'll finally see the iron wall. It's starting to lift. And these people can now have a cushion in their lives. They can live in comfort. They can have money inside of their economy. They can have jobs. They can be happy. And there's something to be said for that. And I think that President Barack Obama, this is a fantastic accomplishment. That's something on his presidential resume. He will be known as the president that opened up Cuba. And that is a fantastic thing to be proud of. Thank you all for listening to Progressive Talk Daily today. Jam the subscribe button, jam the like button, and hit the comments below. We're taking PTV far. Love you all. Have a fantastic day.